Good morning, Maz. Good morning, Saz.
Good morning.
Morning.
It's good to have you back.
Thank
I
you.
don't know whose network is having an itch, but
I'm not hearing nothing.
But we can hear you. Oh,
please, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
we can hear you.
Okay.
Hi, Sister D.
Yo, Atiene.
Good morning.
So much happening. So much
Ma'am,
That's
you
happening.
look
lovely.
great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Very
As
I
intentional.
love your
always,
hair too.
I
as
love
always
Atiene's
smiling.
afro. I'm just looking at that afro and say, one
Good morning.
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 Good
Nice to see
morning.
you all. Good
Good morning, sir.
Auntie Anna.
Alhaji. It's good to see you. Good morning, Mr. Suleiman. I presume you're from Premium Times. You're the person covering us from Premium Times. Thank you for joining us this morning. Our keynote speaker, Professor Andrew Zamani, thank you for joining us this morning. Mr. Michael Oyinlola, he'll be having a welcome address. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us this morning. Alhaji, this blue sits so perfectly on you. Good morning. I don't know if you can hear us. Alhaji, sir, if you can hear us, you could unmute your mic. But I think he's still trying to do that. He's still trying to do that. Good morning, everybody. Good day to every person, depending on what time and where you're joining us from.
Why's my phone not clear?
My name is Fibo Henshaw, and this project in Bridging Generational Leadership Gap is brought to you by Educate, Advocate, Empower Initiative. And this project is aimed at looking at how we can create intergenerational dialogue and collaboration so that there will be seamless transition of leadership, of course, experiences, skills, and ideologies to the younger generation. I will be moderating this event, but I won't be moderating alone. I have a co-curator, and my co-curator will be Mr. Tim. Mr. Tim, please say hello to the team, to the house.
Good day, everyone. I am Timothy Nyagwan, and I'm glad to welcome all of you to this event.
Okay, so joining us too as a moderator will be Mr. Alvin. I don't know if he's here, but if he's here, he can just unmute his mic and say hello to the house. Mr. Alvin, are you here? I think his network is having technical issues, still trying to come up. Mr. Alvin, if you're here, you can unmute your mic and say hello. Okay, while we're waiting for him to fix his technical issues, it's a good thing to have every person on this event today, and every person's on this event was specifically picked with all level of cautions because we know that this event is very important and it's timely, knowing the time that we are in the country with the political history and issue going on. And of course, the youth being seen as agitational and confrontational, depending on how you see it from your perspective. But before we go ahead, we'll be having a welcome address by Mr. We'll be having a welcome address by Mr. Michael Oyelola. So, Mr. Michael, you can unmute your mic and possibly turn on your video so we could have you.
Okay. Good morning. Where I am, the lighting is quite bad, but thank you very much, Favor. And good morning, everyone. I see my country director here. Even though I'm not with you are still directing me this country, and I hope you will direct me in other countries as well. So, good morning, everyone, and it's good to welcome everyone here, and most importantly, to thank Favor for the hard work she has put in so far for this research and all the work they've been doing, Favor and the rest of our team. So this is an ongoing longitudinal research work, and the theme is bridging generational leadership gap in Nigeria. We hope that during this discussion, during this focus group meeting, we are going to holistically engage our speakers here, our relevant stakeholders, to discuss the gaps in our political system from pre-independence generation down to post-independence generation. We also hope that during this discussion, we'll have the opportunity to highlight some of the factors that have led to this gap, while also determining or highlighting some information towards how we can provide solution and entrenching good governance and democratic practice for sustainable development. This is what we hope to achieve during this conversation. And I hope that all of our speakers, including our guest speakers, Professor Zamani, who I also have worked with in the past, and Ms. Ene Obi, who, like I mentioned earlier, was my country director, and she's still directing me anyway. So thank you everyone for your time, and I hope that this discussion would be very fruitful and we can take good lessons out of it. Thank you, and over to you, Favor. Bye. Favor, we can't hear you.
I'm sorry, my mic was mute. I'm sorry. Thank you very much, sir. That was a wonderful welcome address, and we hope that with this, we will be able to get the best out of this discussion. We'll be able to know what has happened, how it has happened, and what can be done to amend the issues that we have. Um, Next on our agenda will be we'll be having the keynote speaker. I don't know, my keynote speaker dropped a message that he's having technical issues entering the grid, so he's back. I'm presuming that with him back, he's having some technical issues and is trying to come up. But while he's at it, Professor Andrew, sir, if you can hear us, sir, can you hear us? I think he's having technical issues. Professor Andrew Zamani is
Hello?
ought to be.
I'm not
Okay,
hearing. I'm not getting you guys clearly at all. I don't know what's happening. The volume is very low.
But we can hear you.
we can hear you, sir. Okay, sir, your mic is mute. You can unmute your mic.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. Am I to talk now?
Okay, we had wanted to be sure that you are ready for us. Okay, Professor Andrew Zamani is a professor of clinical psychology at Nasarawa State University, Kefi, Nigeria. He's the current director of Institute of Governance and Development Studies at the university, having served previously as a director, quality assurance, and dean, Faculty of Social Science. He's the associate, excuse me, of Faculty of Social Science. He's associated with several research work like the identity of psychology in Nigeria, intelligence-led policing, and crime prevention in Plateau State, Nigeria, among others. He is also the director of the Pan-African Psychology Union and Executive Board of the World Association of Cultural Psychiatry and Gede Foundation. Ladies and gentlemen, please make welcome Professor Andrew Zamani for his keynote speech. You have the floor, sir. If you can hear us, you have 15 minutes. We
Yeah,
can hear you,
thank you,
sir.
Eno.
We can have you now.
Thank you, Eno. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes,
can.
we can hear
Hello?
you.
Hello?
We
Hello.
can hear you, sir. We
Okay,
can
very
hear you.
good. Very good.
Yes, we can hear you,
I
sir, but your
thank
network
you
is
organizers
a
for the
bit not
opportunity
stable.
to deliver this.
What's the problem?
I presume he's having technical issues. Oh. Okay, while we are waiting for him to fix the technical issues,
For giving me the opportunity
can
to
you hear us
present
now,
this
sir?
keynote address.
Great.
I want to also congratulate my co-panelists for the honor to share this platform with you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a privilege to share my thoughts and also to be reviewed by you on this all-important topic, bridging leadership gap in the Nigerian political system. I want to approach this topic from three perspectives: our history, our experience, and our reality. Regarding our history, you would all agree with me that our independence from our colonial masters was hard earned as Nigerians. At that time, young Nigerian elites who were beneficiaries of colonial education fought hard and secured political independence for us. Political independence that they obtained for us was fraught with ethnic, religious, economic compromises, upon which today
Professor, can you still hear us? Professor, can you still hear
okay,
us?
sorry,
Okay.
next slide. Yes, I just said that access to political and economic power is now the issue of what I regard as metamorphosing hegemonies and oligarchies in Nigeria. It has been very difficult to achieve sustainable unity, peace, and progress, mainly because of the sentiments that have been orchestrated by these hegemonies and oligarchs. We have experienced a civil war to keep Nigeria one, as it were, with outcomes that are a far cry from these stated intentions. This is because our fundamental philosophy of political leadership, which is divide and rule, forbids it. And of course, you know that that was the British strategy for ruling their colonies in Africa. Leadership recruitment process has been faulty. Why? Because on one hand, the political engineering masterminds have favored both coup d'etats and civilian rule. And mind you, I am not talking about democratic governance here, because I don't see democratic governance. What is our experience? What we are experiencing right now is self-perpetuation in political leadership, leadership against all odds. We're experiencing nepotism and corruption in the corridors of power. We're harvesting clueless and inept political leaders. There is the inability to deconstruct in the political terrain the colonial mentality in our national life, to the extent that our educational system is still not able to liberate our minds towards genuine self-determination, innovation, self-sufficiency, and self-governance, as it were. Recurrent sectarian conflicts abound, and of course, associated with that is the vexed issue of ethno-religious intolerance. We have a very highly fractured public service. We have hyped inflationary trends and decreased purchasing power for citizens. At the productive level, we have low industrial capacity utilization. Agriculture has failed, and there is brazen disregard by our leaders for the rule of law. What is our reality? Our reality is that as we speak, social exclusion holds sway in Nigeria, and there's a widening gap between those who have and those who don't have. There is a very high level of poverty and youth unemployment. Of course, you should expect that there will be youth restiveness, increase in crime, violent extremism, and of course, a pervasive sense of insecurity among citizens. Our health sector has been looted dry, and so our biggest hospitals are mere consulting clinics, because on one hand, we don't have sufficient qualified manpower, and on the other hand, we do not have adequate equipment or even medical supplies to respond to the health needs of our people. Our educational system, of course, you all would agree with me, has been crushed, and crushed dastardly. And then, of course, all over the country, we have this vexed issue of environmental degradation. And that is really very, very, very sad. Our cities and townships have turned into slums. And there is very, very poor urban and regional planning stroke management. Distinguished gentlemen, our reality also is that there is high-level resource plundering. There is hunger and starvation. There is brain drain, and now many young people have given up on our nation and, of course, have adopted Japa syndrome. There's lack of trust for leadership, and, of course, leadership positions have been criminalized. Across board, in corporate organizations, and, of course, in the political terrain, leadership positions have been criminalized. And there's a ravaging multi-generational trauma, and associated with it, the upsurge of mental health challenges. This is our reality. So how do we bridge leadership gap in the political system of our country? I have provided a few solutions. They are by no means exhaustive, but these are things that are really very critical to my mind, and I thought it would be worth sharing with this distinguished audience. Oh, there's echo. Sorry. One is the restoration of trust between the leadership and the led. Secondly, is the redefinition of our national identity. Right now in Nigeria, you have ethnic entities claiming nationhood. The Yoruba people claim they have a Yoruba nation. The Igbos claim they have an Igbo nation. The Gbagi people claim they have a Gbagi nation. We do not have a common sense of identity as Nigerians. And that means something is fundamentally wrong that we have to confront and deal with. We have to also deconstruct Nigeria's colonial heritage. In the political terrain, we still see the angst of divide and rule, people manipulating sentiments, manipulating economic circumstances just to have their way and to have their grip. We need to promote intergenerational dialogue so that we bridge the gap between the past and the present, as well as facilitate agenda setting by both the young, the old, active players, and onlookers. You know, let's set an agenda for the future of Nigeria together. There is a need for us to deliberately seek to identify national heroes so that we can model after them. Definitely, there have been heroes. And of course, you know that we have sung in our national item every opportunity that we have, that the labor of our heroes past shall never be in vain. Who are these heroes? Who are these heroes? We need to be deliberate in identifying them. And we can't do that unless we have set a national identity nomenclature that enables us to develop a framework with which we can identify those who are heroes and not those that have been sung on political platforms because they have money.
Can you hear us, sir?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
I have just 4 more points, and that will be all. We
Okay,
also
sir.
need to establish corporate mentorship programs. All our organizations must be deliberate. All people in management position, corporate management positions, political leadership position must be deliberate in establishing mentorship programs in their organizations. The reason is simple, so that we will bridge leadership gap between the elderly and the young. The time has come for us to bring in our young people, harvest their intellect, harvest their skills, and potentiate them to win their world. We need to develop healthy organizational processes of leadership development and succession planning. Of course, it follows from the previous point that I mentioned. And we need, as Nigerians, to realize that our nation is overdue for a grievance processing mechanism. This nation has been raped badly. It has been plundered terribly. It has been fractured without remorse and is currently highly traumatized to the extent that we are no longer in doubt that we need healing. Our current leaders should be bold to set up a national healing discourse mechanism. If you want to call it the truth and reconciliation process, so be it. Whatever it is, we must be deliberate in recalling ourselves, sitting on the table, organizing a dialogue that can help us to look at what has gone wrong, where we have erred together, and identify the issues and do something to resolve them. But beyond that, we must have the courage to say we are sorry in areas where it is obvious that we have failed. And finally, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I want to proffer that political leadership should establish the framework of equal opportunities for citizens to restore faith, confidence, and other virtues that are critical to bridge leadership gap in our political system. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you very much, sir. That was an excellent speech. Um, Stating from a few points you made, you said we need to deconstruct Nigerian colonial heritage. That is one very important thing that I know that Nigeria need to really sit down to think about, because we are so engrossed with this colonial heritage that we have not really sat down to look inward into the things that has made us a country. And then we need to look at the things that has unified us as a nation, which is, like you said, our identity. And I mean, nobody's carrying a Yoruba ID card, or an Igbo national ID card. What we have is Nigerian passports and national ID card. So if we start discriminating using ethnic and religious sentiment, it would only further increase the rift and create bigger gap. Thank you, sir, for having to join us, despite the fact that you were bereaved and you had a tight schedule. We really do appreciate, and once again, we extend our condolences on behalf of the entire team to say it is well in a trying time like this. Thank you, sir. So I would hand over to my co-curator, Mr. Timothy, to take over as we welcome Chief Moji Makanjuola. Mr. Timothy, can you hear us? If you can hear us, you can unmute your mic.
Can you see me?
Mr.
Can you
Timothy.
hear me?
Okay, I think my co-curator, Mr. Timothy, is having technical issues while he's trying to fix that. I would just run a brief profile of our next speaker, Chief Moji Makanjuola, MFR. She's a Nigerian veteran journalist and broadcaster. She was a former president,
My
Nigerian
pleasure.
Association of
Thank you.
Women. Thank you. She's a veteran journalist and broadcaster. She was the former president, Nigerian Association of Women Journalists. She's a media consultant to UN Women who had also worked for decades in the Nigerian Television Authority, where she rose to the position of head of health and gender desk before her retirement. She has so many awards to her name, among which is a prestigious National Honor Award for the membership of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. She's currently the founder and executive director of the International Society of Media in Public Health, ISMP. Chief Moji Makanjuola, if you can hear us, ma'am, please unmute yourself and you have the floor. 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, team and
But
all
sorry,
for
ma'am, your video
yes,
is off, so we can't see
yes,
you.
yes. Okay, I thought you saw me earlier. It's not important.
We can see you now,
Really
ma'am.
enjoyed the conversation. Like I said earlier, okay, all right. Like I said earlier, I want to first congratulate you for putting this together. It's important. It's a discussion that should be in the forefront of national development now, considering all that the keynote speaker has said and alluded to, and which I concur to. But I'm just going to move away from all that he has said to start, identifying some of the gaps that has led us to where we are today as a people. Um, so thank you very much for inviting me. I hope my thoughts and whatever I'm able to bring forth will be something that we really can start dissecting so that we can have the Nigeria that we all dream of or aspire for. Um, I am so I'm going to be talking about the generational gaps as I see it. And I just want to emphasize that for me, it's not so much about what we talk to ourselves today. It's the fact that we are able to cascade the thoughts that will be gathered here today for better understanding, particularly amongst other Nigerians, cascading it up down to the local government level, where today we do have a lot of issues concerning the entity Nigeria. So here I go, and I'm just going to be reading because what I've done is just a talking point, which I'm sure can lead to further discussion. And please let me apologize for the background noise that you're hearing. Today, two things are happening concurrently, and I had to like pull myself off from this to be part of what we are doing here today. Thank you. I'll try to reduce the background noise as possible, and then we can enjoy the next. I'm sure I have about 7 or 8 minutes to go. So I go ahead. I said the generational factor is one that affects, involves, relates uh, to several generations and the interplay of relationships across those age and generations across all divides social, economic, psychological, educational, religious. We have to bring that in for Nigeria and several other things. The gap is therefore the gap therefore intergenerational and requires bridging, like my program on TV, which I call Bridges. The simplest description is an example of when great grandparents, great grandparents, parents, children, grandchildren, or even after that, all live in the same household, for example. Today, there are 5 generations in the workplace, and I hope that the background noise is not interfering. Hello? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, ma'am. It's just that your background is noisy, but we can hear you.
Today
We can
there are
hear you.
five. Yeah, okay, thank you. Today there are five
Sorry,
generations.
ma'am. You said you can't hear.
I can hear
We can
you
hear you.
loud and clear.
Okay. I thought
Am I missing
Pastor
out
Dayo was
anybody?
saying she can't hear.
Pastor Dio, can you
Ma,
hear me?
I said we can hear you loud and clear above the noise in
Okay,
the background. You are very clear.
okay, all
Good
right.
morning.
Today there are 5 generations in the workplace. The traditionalist before 1964, baby boomers 1946 to 1964, Generation X, early 1960s to late 1970s. They call them the millennials. Generation Y, and early 1980 and late 1990s. And what we have, most recently, Generation Z, late 1990s or 21st century, which we call the Zoomers. So their interactions will necessarily be intergeneral because they are all essentially have to interrelate in the same household and therefore have to find a way to do so without rancor. I'm not sure that's what we have. It is so in the larger society as well as because we are in a global household. We all must develop generational mobility. Most of all, our actions must build peace across all generational divides. The various generations have to understand the dynamics, cultural, religious, occupational, that bind us together. And this is missing. And this is where the gap is. Even from the very foundation, things are missing. We are missing a place of, take for example, uh, the native tongue. A lot of our children today don't speak our native language. We're missing that. Let's look at our cultural norms that has been jettisoned long time back, and that has evolved in what we have, and we are addressing today as generational gap. So the young from the millennials to the Zoomers, they play high value on technology. Today, I mean, everywhere you go, like what we are doing now, it is all hinged on technology and inventions, and will earn our respect because it is at the top of of their value priorities. So it is how best you can engage in technology. And so we lose out on human interrelations. And this is eating into the very fabric of the society, that taking away our rich cultural and traditional uh, 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 core, core, core things that makes us human. So much so we are losing out on all this. And so for us, even identification of who you are or what you do has become now so distant that putting that together is also an intergenerational gap. So the young from the millennium to the Zoomers place high value on technology and inventions and will earn your respect because it is at the top of their value priorities. Sorry. Sorry. Okay, can you give me like 2 minutes? I'll do. Hello? Can you please give me like 2 minutes, 1 second? I want to work out so that I can continue after that.
Okay, she asked for 1 second. That of course is a very interesting discussion that I feel we should really go deep into. Culture has really influenced generational gap, if you ask me, because as far as politics is concerned, ethnicity is also very important, and how we carry culture in terms of bridging this gap is of utmost importance to the approach that we use, and of course our actions. She mentioned about trend and computer age and how technology has influenced the younger generation. Of course, there is a need for us to look at the trends, technology, digitalization, globalization, and how it's affecting and creating these gaps. And next on our radar would be Pastor Dayo Lani. Please, technical team, kindly put up a profile. Thank you. We'll be having Pastor Dayo Lani if the technical team is ready. Okay. A brief profile of Pastor Dayo Lani. Dayo Benjamin Lamy is a seasoned entrepreneur, also dedicated to the empowerment of women
Hello?
and children.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
I'm
ma'am,
back.
we can hear you.
Hello?
Can you hear us?
Antibody, we can hear you.
Hello? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
I do apologize for that interruption, but I'll just continue quickly. So we all have the need for the human connectedness, which drives the Homo sapiens species to its supremacy on the planet. We're losing that, and we need to speak to it. The cultural gains that came, with our tradition and culture, some millennials have downplayed or in some cases eroded outright because we did not enable them to thrive alongside our technology. I'll say to you that we are on the losing side because we do go to other countries in the world. Take India, for example. We share a lot of commonalities with India, but an Indian man is ready, an Indian woman is identified as an Indian. They are not the ones who have not migrated over the years are happy to speak like an Indian, and they have no qualms about that. But a typical Nigerian is trying to, regenerate him or herself. She wants to be more English than the English, want to be more religious than even where the religions came from. And we have lost sight of the core values that we have in our tradition and culture. And I think that that is why what we have today in the society is the high prevalence of impunity everywhere. There is no respect. Even in countries where we said that they have westernized us, or they brought Western civilization. You take, for example, the bus. You go into the bus. As soon as an old woman or an old man comes in, even the generation of today, I mean, even the generation Y and Z knows that it is sacrosanct that you give way to an older person, or you give way to a pregnant woman. These days you don't have it. What you have is the impunity with which that has caused a huge gap, as generational gap. We also have what we call lack of core values, which is eating into every part of our, or of the society. And of course, the one that really worries me most is the entitlement syndrome. For you growing up, yeah, for I would say maybe I'm a baby boomer. Your prayer is that you'll be able to, some measure of looking after your parents when they are aged, or when they are categorized as elders. Today, you find that even the elders are the one keeping the soul of these other ones coming behind us, and so you begin to ask yourself, what happened to Nigeria that I grew up in? You will say that technology is transforming a world occupied by humans. We therefore must make room for the humans and not replace them with the with the technological findings, like the robots of this world. Uh, Technology should serve man and improve our world. The respect for the human person must remain if we are human. And I want to emphasize this: we must remain as human. I work in the health space a lot, and I see that a lot of times, even with the high tech in medicine today, the touch of that doctor or the touch of that nurse goes a long way to bring about healing. And so we still need to feel human. And, we are losing that, particularly with the Zoomers and the Echo Boomers. I've spoken about robotics. They have their own place. We cannot avoid human generational skirmishes if we put them ahead of human being. However, consideration for the people and human factor must override all considerations if we are to bridge the generational gap effectively. The world goes on because we can neither stop the rotation, the revolution of the earth, neither can we stop evolutionary progress. All we can do is manage relationships between human generations, other occupants of our planet in relations to us, human being, and also co-occupants. Well, with what we are seeing now, people going on holiday, in space, we must know that these will continue and more findings will come up as technology grows. But we cannot lose sight of the fact that we are human, and we cannot lose sight that we need to bridge a gap between us. But when I mean us, between what I call the millennials, the baby boomers, the echo boomers, and of course the zoomers themselves. Now, let me go to my own space, which is what I understand. The media can help manage the generational gap both in the workplace and in other places. We must, at least for once, I don't know, I think Professor Zabani mentioned it, and I'm very passionate about it, that we need to evolve a space where we can speak proudly of what we were as a people, as a country yesterday, and bring those core values, those good ones, and bring them forth and join them with what we have today to improve our understanding of who we are. But sometimes I speak to the youth and I say, say to me, what makes you a Nigerian? Oftentimes, they are not very proud to talk about what makes them Nigerians. And I ask them, what value are you ready to bring to the table? And they just say to me, "Ah, in your own time it was better." No, it is still part of our time because we are still alive, we're still living, and we must consciously and deliberately understand that to effectively manage the generational diversity, we must evolve better workplace culture, which goes through from family up to our workplace and our everyday interaction as human beings. Through peace building, understanding ourselves better, being proud, evolving a Nigerian that would like a Rwandan would not say to you, "I'm Hutu or Tutsi." The first thing he says to you is that I am a Rwandese, and we should evolve that. That makes us a proud Nigerian. That is not talking about where you come from or what religion or what God you serve, but an essential to being patriotic. We can use this as a deliberate strategic tool to bind us together. I'll add that the essentials of what to do are: one, avoid generational stereotyping, encourage hybrid work environments, knowledge sharing across the ages, use company values to unify our team, organize team building exercise, promote creative work environment. That way, we would go faster in bridging the generational gap. Coaching and mentoring, reverse mentoring is a major strategy to close this gap. Those of us in the media space have an important role to play here in getting our planet to peacefully accommodate us all. We all belong here. Unfortunately, we don't have any other place to go. I'll soon be done, and all five generations of us. And we have brought our planet to where it is, building on the knowledge of one generation to the other. So life is a continuum. Generational gap building, which we must bridge, is also should also be seen as a continuum. Finally, we can create awareness around the issues of generational gaps to improve, enhance, and mitigate adversities in our generation. What we learn from our forebears is what has taken us this far. Those after us should also learn the values, the positive values that can take us further and faster even with technology. I know that this is doable, and I know that together we can run faster and get it done. Thank you for the time allotted to me to speak. I do pray that this will move from talking heads to implementation that will help to bridge the gap, the generational gap. Thank you for listening.
Mr. Moore, well done.
Thank you very much, Chief Moji Makanjuwala. That was a very interesting presentation. My hope that we get to have the paper so that we could have put it together while we are gathering our report. That was a very interesting thing. And one thing she said that struck me was we should avoid generational stereotyping. This is very important, if you ask me, very important and crucial issue, especially in the times where we are. Generational stereotyping is one thing we must look forward to and look at what can be done, what should be done. How do we create awareness that creates equity, generational equity, love, and bond? Thank you once again, ma'am, for creating time out of your very tight schedule to have this talk with us. I don't know if my technical team is ready. We can have Pastor Dayo just bring up a profile so we could put up. I want to also apologize for the earlier, the way we had to cut you off, Pastor Dayo. I didn't know that Chief Moji was coming back, so I'm really
US,
sorry about that.
I don't have a problem with that. You know, I think trying to get to my resume, let's leave that right. So I think as a multi-layered personality and everything, there is so much we can say and may not be necessary at this time. You can always refer to that eventually. But I will like to
Mm.
state, you understand that, yes, my name is Dio Benjamin Flannery and not Olani Benjamin. But having said that, Madam Elebon, thank you so much
Okay.
for this platform, for this engagement, and for the illumination that is coming with all of these very robust conversations and engagements that are really, when Professor Zamani was speaking earlier on, I loved the interplay reference between hegemonies and oligarchies in the political process and identifying the gaps right there. I think that is so real. And like you said, the grievance processing mechanism the GPM, I put it here, it's so critical to our healing as a nation and being able to become the fulfilled expression, oh God of creation, directing our noble course. And, like Chief Makonjola, like we all affectionately call her, or some of us do, Auntie Moji, looking at generational mobility and closing the gaps between these five generations, the five generation now distinctions or demographics that she was able to profile for us um, so adroitly. Thank you very much, ma'am. I believe that for me, my own subject matter being that which focuses on the family and how the family, in being able to not necessarily replicate itself, but identifying those gaps, becomes the reference mode for closing the gaps or eliminating them if there is such a thing possible. Because I believe we all live with gaps. Every generation is going to have the gaps. But the reality of closing gaps leadership wise or intergenerationally is always to bring the focus to you. And the first prism is who I am. How am I now reconstituting a channel of engagement, of change, of mentorship, of reference for impact in the redefined mentality, as it were, of not just like Professor Zamani said, when you look at history, experience, our now reality. And our reality, like he gave it in that two positioned representation of reality, brings it to you, brings it to me. So today, and you're referring to me as the pastor. I'm a mediapreneur. I'm an advocate. I'm a politician. But what you've spotlighted in my many-sided, multifaceted expression of the persona that I bring and the brand that I bring to my marketplace and to my generation of leadership is so many things. So here I am today as a pastor. So let's talk as a pastor. Let me get that scripture that I'm going to put up in Ephesians. Where is it? Ephesians, and that's because you've taught me now as a pastor. So let me speak as yeah.
I take full responsibility for that.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
you now put me there as pastor. So okay, then I see
But
fine.
I didn't ask to come in the capacity as a pastor anyway. But I
No, no,
know
no.
that family is
I'm
a
not
is
pushing, my dear. I'm not pushing back from being a pastor because what is a pastor? You see, the reality of leadership is four things I put in the acronym of leadership. One, it's about lifestyle. You lead by lifestyle. You define leadership by your lifestyle. E, when you
absolutely.
empower. So it's about the leadership by example. So you have lifestyle, you have example, and in the leadership of example, you're looking at expression, your expression, your personal brand expression. You're looking at
Right.
experience. You're looking at entrepreneurial capacity, and not just as a business person, but everything is an enterprise. Your social adaptation is an enterprise. My advocate for youth, for women, whether it's a girl child, a boy child, for politics, for
We're doing a
policy,
conference.
all of this is experience
This is not
in
clear.
that place. LE, okay, lifestyle. Um, 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 what do you call it? You look at your expression. A, aspiration. You lead by aspiration. My aspirations must become the direction of my values. Values that now are through mentorship transferred to a next generation. I'm very, very committed to my connection with the generation after me and beyond, because actually I must celebrate all of you. You're the ones who have really, really invested in giving me, as Dio Benjamin's Lani, more popularly referred to as Auntie D, my profiling, my celebration, and my distinction in every marketplace of reference. It has always been younger generations that have brought me to the fore. So I'm very committed, not just in investing, but in celebrating and in giving courageous direction. Because let me tell you, your generation needs, you need courage to give you people direction. It's almost like what, like Antibody was saying, you get into a bus. There was a time when it was equal you get up from elder, but somebody's going to say to you, and I had that practically done, and she questioned and queried the mamas on the flight with us and said, you should ask the question, how am I here? And I realized that that challenge was actually, she wasn't wrong, and they weren't wrong either. But what she was making was a point that the generations that have gone ahead of us should learn to use mentorship not as an imposition, but an interrelated connection so that you don't get the contrary reactions that are the first default setting of the generation that we see now. So we talk about aspirations. Those aspirations have to be very deliberate, intentional, emotionally, intelligently communicated, and connecting to raising a generation that will lead their own. I'm a bridge right now. I'm too young to be in the generation ahead of me. I'm too old to be in the generation coming after me. And I found that I am a bridge generation by my age, by my exposure, and by my relationship engagements. And finally, D, talking about the D factor, which has to do with the de emphasizing of what is about age, but more about your impact, your legacy. It's important that we're deliberate about these things. So that is who I see the leader as being. So, yes, I'm here in my reference capacity as a pastor, and I'm not backing away from it. That is who I am. That is who I've evolved is one of those expressions. And it's not about a church, it's a dynamic of being in a marketplace, of being in society, of being in community, and being able to be a leader by lifestyle, aspiration, example, and your de emphasis of the fact that this is who I am. It's not about my title, it's not about my age, but rather it's about the direction that creates legacy for the generation that I am nurturing and raising through my own standards. So when Paul was praying in Ephesians 3 and 14, he said, "For this cause I bow my knees unto the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, of whom the whole family in heaven and earth is named, that he will grant." And he goes on to talk about how Abraham is the father, and through him all families of the earth are blessed. What I love about the persona of Abraham is not defined to a Christian religion, but he is also an expression of leadership, of fatherhood within the Islamic, within the Muslim reference culture and personality, intergenerational personality. He's the father of Ishmael. He's the father of Isaac. The truth of the matter, when it comes to the quality and the place of our intergenerational connection, we must not see ourselves as separated by our religion. This is so critical, particularly in the kind of heterogeneous environment we find ourselves in as a nation in terms of our politics. Religion has driven things by people who have, unfortunately, twisted religion to abuse and pervasively, perversely alter the form of our own national unity as a family. The family is the womb and cradle of social conception. I put some notes down here. It's conception, gestation, and our evolution. Without families, there would be no communities, no neighborhoods, no neighbors, no villages, no cities, no bridges, and no destinations. Think of it. There would even be no world to live in because it took a first family conceived, birth to multiply, to create a world, to build a world that we now freelance ourselves in. And, we've moved from what is the first family with the first earth Adam to a fabulous family, sophisticated, but so flawed in our generational representations as families. See, when it comes to talking about looking at the nature of humanity, our God's seed was for us to be in that reference nature, one that would always build community. And from the community we build, we would become, quote unquote, the saviors, the developers, the innovators, the creatives, the doctors, all of that, using the technology of the mind, our ingenuity, our ideation, to begin to model and remodel our godness, because we are created in the image and likeness of God into everything that we do and we become. Think of it. Yes, God created us complete with wombs and all of that. But then God gave us intelligence in another dispensation, because the reality was people like me were not going to be able to push our babies out of the matrix. We were going to need the intervention of technology, medical science, to have CS and deliver babies and still be living mothers with our living children. the reality of the ingenuity of the human species as we continue to evolve, is the ingenuity of our innovation, not just to adapt, but to recenter again and again what is the initial, most critical, dynamic DNA of every community, defining leadership through the family. Now, these days, of course, the issue of the family is one that is greatly contested, challenged, impugned, denigrated by a generation that has had it with the whole family structure and attitude, not just of dads and moms, but of society that has taken the positioning of family and used it to demand certain social behavioral outcomes and expectations from children who eventually go on to be their own people within their own social classes, castes, and professional dynamics. And all of this has implicated, like we say, you give a dog a bad name. The family has, along the line, millennially, has gotten a bad name. But you cannot deny the fact that as the family unit, the family is still the first, most pivotal expression of personal identity, which leads through exposure and experience to leadership positioning, leadership identification, leadership representation, and reference. Both you have good, great. You also have evil and bad leaders. Leadership is simply the power to influence and raise a followership. And if you are able to move it beyond just the moment to a transgenerational thing, still this day, you still have people who are following Hitler, who are there doing the very contrary things, but the leadership of Hitler, his thought process, his mentality, all of that which grew out of his family exposure is what is directing this. Trauma in childhood or toxic experiences, exposure in um, 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 personality development would always influence the character expression of the individual as a leader. You know, it's more commonly said, oh, leaders are born, some leaders are born, some leaders are raised, and you know, it's something you go through. No, no, no. The fact of I realize is this: everybody has a born potential to be a leader, but it takes a very clear nurturing for us to emerge into that place, come into a personal consciousness of the fact that you are a reference, you are an alpha reference, raising a generation with you. But it all comes from where you're coming from. However, it's amazing that the very things that are trauma, that are toxic, that in another person would eliminate an individual from ever emerging in leadership space is the very thing that can serve as a trigger to make one a defiant, resolute, incredibly directed leader. It's not about going to school and getting a certificate. It's not about having the best pedigree in terms of your family status or background. So what is it out of the family, that cradle of experience and exposure, whatever it is, something in that DNA connected with what comes from another DNA is what will eventually give to us that individual person. In a more familiar, take it off Google search dictionaries, a family is a group of persons united by ties of marriage, blood, or adoption, and they constitute a single household. They interact with each other in their respective social positions, usually those of spouses, children, parents, and siblings. We have different expressions of family now that challenge your sense of religion, your sense of culture, and all of that. So, out of these families, when if I condemn one because of my religious posture, because of my cultural adaptation, does that mean that individual will not become an exceptional leader of thought, of influence, of industry, of merit in their own place of professional reference? No. So, leadership, if we want to define it just based on the professional and everything, it just spreads the DNA everywhere. But when you want to look at it on the merit of values that validate the person and their legacy in society and raising an intergenerational product that has the integrity, the distinction, we're talking about old people lacking integrity and all of that. It's amazing. What you will call integrity in one, the other person is going to completely and totally define as an evil mechanism. So I look at it, I say, a leader is born or a leader is laid to rest simply by exposure, experience, contact, associations, fellowship, followership. All of these things will bring out that persona. One of my most profound lessons about leadership and the family gap and the need for families to, when you say families, leadership in families, the father, the mother, the person of first reference, to really take ownership now in such a time as this is what my late dad said. My dad was privileged to have served this nation in capacities of very significant engagement ministerially, chief of materials for the Ministry of Defense. He's the designer of Nigeria's warship, the NNS Aradu. My father's pedigree, when he was retiring from service, my dad was 33 years old. He'd been a two-time minister. Please understand all of this. Now, in his old years, I said, Daddy, you have to write. You have to speak to Nigeria because he is my single greatest influence for being the patriot that I am. But you know what he told me? He said, I'm never going to write a book, Dad. I am never going to write a book. But what you find out about me, you write. My goodness, when my father died, my father has put me on a different PhD master. I can't describe it. But one thing he did tell me was, I said, okay, so what's the solution for Nigeria? Because he said, Dio, Nigeria has failed. My generation has failed. Please understand, my dad was 001. First generation of national award winners. My daddy was NNS Nigeria warship. Do you understand? I'm talking about my daddy served and gave to this nation. Before you had, things like the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, Murtala Mohammed Airport, all of these things. But my daddy said, even though he had this, my daddy has an incredible, before there was a Dora Queen, excuse me, she wasn't even born. My daddy was Mr. Integrity of Nigeria. He was a problem to the emerging corruption of Nigeria. But you know what he told me? He said the failure of Nigeria has been, and the only solution, he said, I refuse to point to myself and say, oh, I succeeded. A tree is not made of any forest. But he said the family died. My daddy said this as an 84-year-old, quote unquote, in his failed leader of Nigeria. He said the family is the only solution. And he said, even where I, as your dad, have failed as a daddy in raising and doing certain things, this is the truth. Dio, when you get to the point of engaging with your family, the family structure, we will begin to restructure this nation. I thought to myself, my daddy is pragmatic. My daddy can't talk about something that seemingly so vague. But as I have come more into the process, even now that I've gotten into politics, I realize that what he's saying is so true. So what he's actually pointing to is me as the single most important reference. How did Prof put it? Metamorphosis. The metamorphosis. I am the single most influential metamorphosis that is going to happen. I will profile myself as being a single reference of intergenerational connect. And for that, therefore, if it begins with me, then that we are seeking to bridge in leadership through family. It's not about religion. It's not about church. It's not about the mosque and the next best Holy Ghost service. It is about the capacity of the family to properly direct, bring under a sincere review. You see those things we're talking about, emotional intelligence and all. It's not just the mom. It's a mom as a wife influencing her husband as a father. It's the husband as a father to his children, and also an influencer building up the capacities of his wife, like my husband has done for me, that has brought me out and made me who I am. It's not because I'm into women's liberation, feminism, I'm insisting I have to be this kind of woman. No, my husband guides me, and then at the same time, I've learned the courage of becoming a voice and understanding that I don't have to compare myself with anyone to become the best version of me. And as I do that, I am accountable, not just to my sons, to my daughter, but to sons and daughters from other mothers. I am Auntie D, not just to people who are connected to me by blood, but people who are connected to me by experience and will come to me for counsel, and will come to me and will watch me in the place of my expressions of values in my lifestyle. Then I have I have become the expression, the definition, and the distinction of the gap, the bridge, the bridge between the gaps intergenerationally, generationally. Because let me say one thing: the intergenerational conversation is one thing, but the intergenerational is the other thing. We have failed in leadership to understand that where you give focus and spotlight to the girl child, you must also give social developmental focus to the boy child. Right now, I'm a mother of 3 sons and 1 girl child. I don't even call them boys because boys need to evolve to men, from men to leaders. And in leadership, they have to be inculcated with values of emotional intelligence, not just being called titled he for she's. No, 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 no. But people who are able to reference themselves as models over being mothers. No, please, let us understand. Leadership is in our lifestyle. Leadership is in our example. Leadership is in our aspirations activated as our values. And leadership is in the de-emphasis of who we are, because I'm a woman, because I'm this age, because I've got this title, because I've got this pedigree. No, leadership is the investment of my true humanity for humanity without, as Auntie Moji said, impunity. And if there's a purity in how to do it, to do it. Now, let me preach it as Pastor Dyer: to the pure, God will show himself pure. And in that representation, we will raise a nation in which of a truth we would have unity, faith, peace, and progress. So help me, God.
That was a
Well,
very wonderful, wonderful performance. I'll hand over to my co-curator, Mr. Alvin, to take over from here.
All right,
Thank
it's
you
a
very
pleasure. I hope you can hear me. I had network issues. We're in Nigeria, so you can understand. I've not
No, no, no,
traveled out
correct
here.
that statement.
Okay, things
Correct
are
it
changing in
now.
the country.
Correct
We are
it now.
getting better.
Technology is global.
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
Yes, but I'm here now. Thank you for correcting me. It's a pleasure to come in now. One of the reasons why is if Pastor Daniel Lani didn't put her name, didn't put pastor to her name, I would have put that because I'm her member. You know, I'm
Oh,
a member of the church.
you are
So
not helping things. You are not helping my matter.
no, I would have put it. If you didn't put it, I say, that's my pastor, Joe, because of God. All right.
Okay,
So it
everybody,
is
offering
pleasure.
time, blessing time. And who wants to
Yes.
give their life to Christ? You got to do it right now. God bless you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much for blessing us. And I apologize for my network. I'm here, and then the show will go on. So far, the moderators have been doing so well, and we've had a wonderful presentation from everyone. Please, let us just clap for them wherever we are right now. The people that have moderated, please, a round of applause. You see, I have been blessed, not because the pastor spoke, but I have been blessed. So let us go on because we'll be having more wonderful presentations. But we'll also beg us so that we can be up to speed to try and keep to our time, and God will help us to achieve that. So the next person to talk right now will be Mr. Bulus David. Mr. Bulus David will be talking on the effects of education in bridging leadership gap. Of course, we know what education, how education has affected Nigeria. We are getting better and we will get there, but we need to bridge the gap when it comes to education. So Mr. Bulus David is a social political activist. He has worked with Plateau Radio Television Corporation, Plateau State, where he served as the general manager. He served as the director, National Orientation Agency, Plateau State, before his retirement. He has written and delivered a lot of papers. He has been honored with awards at national, state, and local level. Okay, it's also a professional, in what he does. So let's put our hands together as we welcome Mr. Bulus David.
Thank you. Thank you for the welcome.
You're
Good
welcome.
afternoon. I think it's already afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I've been asked to talk about the role of education in bridging leadership at this forum. By way of
Sir,
introduction,
if
I'd
you
like to
don't
say that
mind,
the
can we
demand
see
for
your
good
face?
leadership.
Sir, can you
My
hear
camera
me?
is not very good. Yes, I can hear you very well.
Okay,
The
okay,
camera on my phone is a little bit faulty.
okay.
Is that okay, please? Is that
Yes,
okay?
please, you can go on. You can go on, sir.
Yes. By way of introduction, I'd like to say that the demand for leadership is a global one, but more critical for developing nations and a country like ours, Nigeria. One is not surprised, therefore, that the leadership is in focus for discussion at this forum. It is more gratifying to note that the discussion is being organized by middle-aged people and young people who are emerging leaders in our country. Equally important is the fact that we are interrogating the role of education in bridging leadership. Leadership is often referred to as a basic agent of socialization, an outcome of socialization. Although legal requirement for contesting political leadership has been reduced to primary and secondary school, you are aware that most of the political office contestants in Nigeria have certificates almost uh, at all levels of our education. Yet our leaders are almost at all levels of society have considered or have manifested a tendency of corruption and providing low level of education. Is the problem really education there? And if this is so, what type of education can bridge leadership gap in Nigeria? The answer to this question is a major focus of this short presentation. What is education? Basically, education is teaching, training, and learning to improve knowledge and develop skills. And there are different typologies of education that you are aware of, like we have the formal education, and I don't like to dwell so much of it because most of us have gone to formal schools and we know what this is all about. We also have the informal education, where the parents are the first teachers and community members are also teachers, including peers, books, and media. And the new media is also a teacher in this respect, as well as our personal experiences. All are teachers. Then we have the non-formal education, which is like adult education. It's very similar to the formal education, except that you are dealing with adults. And like formal education, adult education is deliberate and also systemic. The goal of education generally is that at the end of receiving education, learners must be found worthy in character and learnings. Our concern today is how education is bridging leadership development. But who is a leader? A leader is one who inspires passion and motivation in followers, is one with a vision and mission. A leader without vision cannot be a leader. He must have sight, he must be able to know where he's driving people to, and he must have landmark that he wants to use to test whether he's moving forward or not. He's one who ensures team has support and tools to achieve their goals. So he's leading a team, but they must have support and must also have tools to achieve this goal. He's a driver. In fact, I like the metaphor of a driver because a driver must have vision. He must have sight. If you are traveling to Lagos and you enter a vehicle and the driver is a blind man, I'm sure if you knew he's a blind man, you wouldn't enter because he must have sight, he must have vision, and he must have a roadmap. He must know where he's going to. If you are going to Lagos and you sleep in the car and find yourself in Gombe, then you know that this man doesn't have any roadmap. He doesn't know where he's going to. And our leaders are supposed to be like that. They must take us to our destination, a destination that we're yearning for. A leader is also a shepherd leading from the front. Sometimes he's in the front. Sometimes you can find a leader at the middle, uh, in the midst of the followers. But I like the idea that a leader can be at the rear. This is the leadership position I enjoy most. when I'm at the rear. I don't have to be at the front. I don't have to be in the middle, but just being at the rear, and watching the people that you are leading and providing leadership at that level. He is an influencer. That's one way of defining leadership. Leaders are influencers. Leaders must have values. And I like to talk about the values because these are the things that make leadership. And whether or not education is providing these values is what we are going to discuss. A leader must have compassion for his followers. When they are hungry, he will feel their hunger. He will be empathetic. He will be very, very compassionate. Compassion is an aspect of love that he can demonstrate for his followers. A leader, another value is that he must have vision. He must know where he's taking the people to because they are trusting him that he will take them to the promised land. Like Moses, he must know the direction and he must know where he's taking them to. He must also have a mission. And mission will mean that there must be landmarks that he wants to achieve. And so if he has traveled 10 miles, he can celebrate it. If he has gone 100 miles, he can celebrate and he knows he's making moves. Most of the time, our leaders don't even have vision. They don't have mission. They they take you to wherever they want to take you and abandon you there. A leader must also have courage because leadership will be tested and it will take a man of courage to move forward. You are likely going to get to a level where you are by the Red Sea. It will take courage, and faith is also another value to be able to take the people across the Red Sea. And I use the Red Sea as a metaphor for all the challenges that you will find on the way. A leader must also be accountable. That's another value that you must find in a leader. He must be accountable to the people, to a system. When you have leaders who do not demonstrate accountability, they are accountable only to themselves. And most of the time, such leaders are not leaders, they are probably thieves. Leaders must also be people who observe the rule of law. And this is very important for us as a country. Our leaders must respect laws. They must respect the different arms of government. When the judiciary make pronouncement, the leaders must obey. And this is very important. So if they make laws, they must also abide by those laws. And other values I like to talk about are transparency and discipline, faithfulness, truthfulness, and justice. These and many more values are critical values that a leader must have. So we'd like to look at the Nigerian situation. Do they have these values? Do they demonstrate these values? My experience in Nigeria for over 30 years that I've been a civil servant and I've worked also as a leader is that most of the people that I have met, they are leaders without character. They are leaders without these values. So this country is in danger. If you have a driver who has no value, who has no respect for the laws of driving, then there is problem. And I think that we are in great danger because most of our leaders, some of them are leaders, they don't have values, they don't have character. They don't even know where they are taking us to. Today their friends will meet and say, let's go left, and they take left, and they go there. Another set of friends will come and say, let's go this direction, and they're there. So they go to do party anywhere, and wherever they can enjoy themselves, they go there. They are not thinking about taking us to the promised land. They don't even know what the promised land looks like. So they cannot paint a picture of the promised land and say that when we get to the promised land, it's going to be a land flowing with milk and honey. They don't even know what it is. The milk and honey is what they are taking today. They don't know what tomorrow will look like. So everybody is making hay while the sun shines. And because they don't know where they are taking us to, they don't have any landmark, of achievement. They cannot say that after the first year, we will be at this place. Second year, we are going to be here. This will create excitements among young people, among the followers, because they know that we will soon be at the promised land. No landmarks at all. There are leaders without courage. When leadership is tested, you find that they become like worms because they don't have courage. The leaders without compassion, they don't have the decision they take. And some of the recent decisions that were taken in this country show that the leadership was unaware of how some of these policies are going to affect us. So they had no compassion because they were not going to be affected by some of the policies, and they push it down our throat, and we swallow them like chloroquine, hoping that there will be solution. I have seen a lot of our leaders who are greedy, who are selfish. When you see them pursuing a public policy, it is because there is something inside for them. It's very, very, very sad. When you are in the civil service and you see files are moving, then there is something in the file that somebody is going to benefit. And this is very, very sad. Our leaders are lawless. They don't obey laws. They don't make rules that are made are not for them. Leaders that I have seen in Nigeria are mostly driven by primordial sentiments and loyalties. Okay, so once they are in position of leadership, the people they want to protect are their family members, the ones they want to provide for are family and friends. So you have a governance for family and friends. This is a demonstration of unpatriotism, which is also another value. There are leaders with negative influence on emerging leaders. My greatest fear about our leadership today in Nigeria is that they are grooming young people in their own image. And so if we are going to have a set of young people, sometimes I look at young people, I look at their enthusiasm. But when I discover that they are followers of these old people who are demonstrating low capacity, then I'm really scared. Because most of us are thinking that at our age, the young people should be the one who become rulers. But if they are already in the molds of those who have no vision, those who have no mission, who have no courage, have no compassion, then the thing is not about age then. This is really scary, isn't it? Leaders, I was really shocked to my bones of recent because the educational institutions are the ones that the most critical agent of socialization and also of bridging our leadership. But when you find uh, laws are made for election, the Electoral Act, and because it's like exam, politicians the laws set exams for politicians and wanted to know whether they are going to pass. But you find that it is professors who help them to to cheat and to break the regulations for that exam. Then that is a serious one when it comes from professors whom we have trusted that these ones have values. These are the ones who used to give values to our children because our children must go to university, go to higher institutions, and when they are awarded certificates, they are told that, and we are also told that they were found worthy in character and learning. But what if it's the professor who make that announcement is the one breaking the law? Then it's very sad. It's a tragedy. All of this are found in our national life. We see it in the appointment of leaders at the highest and the lowest level of our leadership. When appointments are being made, it is only their cronies, only family members, only if you check those who are at the top, you find that they're all related. How comes? How comes? Is that leadership? It's terrible, isn't it? In the allocation and management of our national values, because they are there, they are friends and families, they are the only ones in charge of those areas. And worse still, if they are the only ones who are also in charge of our national security, then they can only be concerned about their families, concerned about their children, concerned about their friends, and things like that. So we are in danger, great danger, if we're having those kind of leadership. Our judiciary that we have so much trusted, we say is the hope of the common man, is also fallen victim of this. So this is a tragedy. I'm painting a very terrible picture of how Nigeria is, and truly that's how Nigeria is. The judiciary is also failing. The legislators make laws that they do not obey. When you have a situation where a Senate president who did not contest election now is declared as a winner in an election, then there's trouble. Oh. He didn't contest the primaries. For me, that man ought not to be in that office. But in Nigeria, anything goes. We see these failures also in executive action, in the management of our national assets, in the relationship between ethnic nationalities. We saw it play out in Lagos, engineered by leaders when Igbos became the focus of marginalization during election. Okay, and during election, we see the tendency because of poor leadership is affecting the way we vote. So people are also being asked to vote their own tribal people, vote this and that. This is terrible. In the management of our industrial dispute, we see it manifesting. So there's lawlessness. At the top, there's also lawlessness amongst our citizens. And this is giving a very bad image to us as a country. It's responsible for the prosperity of Nigeria. All right, so what should be the solution? We're talking about education. Education is a vehicle for value, uh, uh, for the impacting values amongst our young people. But can we say that the people who are leaders in this country don't have education? No, they are educated people. So there's problem with the kind of education that we are giving them. There's problem with the kind of education. If everybody is educated, if the professors are educated, if the senators are educated, and they are demonstrating this low level of leadership, and their lives are characterized by these vices, then there is something wrong with education. And I dare not to recommend, dare wish to recommend that the only solution to our country's leadership problem, I think, majorly, is education, 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 using whatever vehicle, whether it's the informal one or the non-formal one or the formal one. Education must be funded properly. Education must be funded properly. But most
All right,
importantly,
Mr. Bruce, sorry to
holistic
interrupt.
education.
You help us start rounding off.
I'm, yes, I'm rounding off.
All right,
Most
thank you very much.
importantly, it should be holistic education that is all rounded should be prioritized. And we need to prioritize the security and welfare of our citizens and ensure that everybody is in focus. Holistic education for our leaders is key to this. I want to thank you all for listening. And basically, this is my thoughts concerning bridging the leadership gap. We need to do a rethink about the kind of education we give in this country. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, thank you,
Thank
thank you.
you.
Please, a round of applause for Mr. Bulus. That was a wonderful one, though you first gave us plenty jabs as to how bad our leadership is, with plenty grammar. But that's where an education is from a pastor. So thank you very much once again. Okay, so the next person coming up, because we don't have time, we're going straight to the point, is Mrs. NLOB, and she'll be talking about still on bridging the gap, the generation leadership gap in Nigeria. And this is a little bit sensitive because it's something that happened of recent, and she's talking about lessons from the 2023, elections. So please put your hands together as we welcome Mrs. Obi. It's a pleasure having you, ma'am.
Thank you very much for having me. And I want to say thank you. I
So I can off
appreciate.
it.
I can see my sister Moji, and Sister D, all of you, and thank you, Favor, for all the pursuit in order to have me involved. So, thank you so much. I just want to going to talk of the election, but I just want to appreciate, you know, Professor Zamani for all the points that he brought. But I want to start my thoughts with something that I witnessed. Okay, one was this morning, a body of a Nigerian was found in the tire space of a KLM, in Holland. That meant that the young man, was in the tires, and the tires crushed him, took him all the way to Holland. He landed there. That is some of the things we are finding now. The way Nigerians are desperate, the way we have reduced the dignity of our young people for them now to be searching for where we are. And when Professor Zamani started his talk, he talked about the young people that fought for the independence of Nigeria. And you have as young as people like at the age of 29, as ministers for the Federal Republic of Nigeria. You had Gowon, who was 32, who was not even married when he became the president of Nigeria. And so when you are looking at some of the things where we are coming from, you begin to wonder the level of the young people that we're talking about. And then we are coming into a situation where the poverty level, as admitted by the National Bureau of Statistics, that 133 million Nigerians are below the poverty line. And this was a survey that was conducted between 2021 and 2022, February. That's February from January to February the following year, and so on. And so when you look at that category, before Nigeria, about 31 states went below the flood last year. You can imagine how many people must have fallen below the poverty line. And this year we are anticipating, the same thing. And then the issue of the youthage of the Nigerian society, when you see 62.2% of Nigerians being young people, it means we have a volume of human beings that we need to be proud of. You have volume of energy that we also need to be channeled. And if you don't channel all of that, then there's a problem. So we need to look at the dignity of the Nigerian youth, the dignity of the Nigerian adults, the dignity of the Nigerian, the aged people who finish even with the system. And at the end of the day, as a retiree, they have no pension and they can leave them to go. Many of them die before their pensions are paid. There is a primitive accumulation of resources that you have not seen in a very long time, or that you are seeing. I wonder whether our leaders know that nobody is going out of this world with anything at all. But I like the issue of the potential for the youth, the issue of the national healing, which our colleague has talked about. I witnessed an accident 2 days ago. We're just coming on one of the major roads, and in front of me, just a few meters from me, a vehicle tumbled. It just went on the side and stood there. And Nigerians were just packing. Before you know, somebody was coming out. Another person went and helped. Before you know, they turned down the vehicle, and others had access. They came out. Nobody asked whether of your religion, of your tribe, of where you come from, and so on. Nigerians are lovely people. They are loving people, but we have a machinery that is trying to turn us around. We need to be able to look at that. And so when I'm looking at some of the things here, in terms of secession, how do we produce leaders? Because my topic came from the generational gap, but you want me to narrow it down. But I just want to give a little bit of a broad base of the generational gap that we're talking about, because I come from the background of students' unionism. And that, I thought, is one of the things we are coming out from. You have primitive accumulation of our leaders, the looting of the treasury, of the economy, and it is okay. It is not okay. And people are, we are seeing them, and there seems not to be remedy. But so many things have happened. And I want to say that when I saw NSAS, I feel a new lease of life. When that happened, for me, it made me feel that the younger Nigerians are not going to take things for granted forever. And they are seeing what is happening, and they are not going to let go, because at one point, I say the generational gap is going. I started feeling, because of maybe the privileges I had to build, for my capacity to be built on different streams and areas, that the younger people are not getting that. First was I was in the students' unionism. Even when I entered school, there were social cells where you look at the issue of Marxist thought or Lenin's thought and so on, the socialist thoughts, the ideological basis that were on ground at the time, we were reading anything that is printed. But what is happening to the younger generation, and where are we coming from? And so when you are looking at some of the lessons that we're learning, we have mentioned the issue of education, and I want to come back to that. When you invest in education, When you invest in your human capital, you are not doing anybody a favor. You are preparing the economy, preparing for those who will take over your economy for the future. You are preparing for the future. And so when you invest on today, you are not doing any child, giving them any privilege. And if you look at all those who are in government today, they were giving scholarships, not only to study in Nigeria, but to go out of Nigeria to go and study and come back to Nigeria. And at that time, Nigeria was so attractive that those who go out willingly come back to Nigeria to come and put their shoes down. Nigerians didn't want to go abroad. Because if you look at, you may smile at that, but if you look at the food diversity, there is nowhere else you are getting that. If you go out of Nigeria, you are going to miss Nigeria, you want to come back. But then there were jobs for Nigeria. So at that time, they prepared for the population. But right now, we are not investing in our population. We are not preparing, for our population. And then when you come down to the digits, now we have more private, universities, private institutions than any. When I was growing up, there was not a single. You have missionary schools, but not this one. And we are giving every year, even the leaders, the presidents and the leaders of Nigeria are creating universities. And what that is introducing, the inequalities that is bridging. I went to school with children of presidents and in a public institution. So where do you see any president now going to a child of a president, even the children of the politicians going to the private schools? And so we are introducing all of this to our young people, and the future is going to look very bleak if we're not very careful. So the culture of patriotism, issues of privatization, very, very dangerous, and is creating more inequalities. And so what it means is that, like Dayo's father said, that the generation has failed. It failed the younger Nigerians. Before I went to the university, they had removed the meals, the free meals in school. And so what they were having at that time, you give quality meals for the nutrition of the students. But they removed it just before we went in. The leaders of that time thought about an angry man, a hungry man as an angry man. The quality of the nutrition for the people themselves, for the students themselves. We're not paying any attention now. And then the culture of patriotism. When we're growing up, patriotism was not in doubt. If you are an activist, you are an activist. You are true to Nigeria 100%. What is the quality of citizens that we have now? The political class. And I don't blame them, because when some of us were on that stage, we did not look at how we were going to succeed. We did not plan for taking over. We did not plan for participation. We fought for democracy. We got democracy, and then we left it there hanging. And those who want to walk the stage went in. I remember the time that if you have to go for a chairmanship of a local government, you will not spend anything, just go and fill a form. But many people were not even wanting to go there. And so there is a lot. We need to use human rights-based approach to some of the things we're doing. But let me come to my text before, when I'm rounding up, I'm going to come back again to the issue of the quality of citizenship. When you are looking at the elections, one of the beauty of this election, I think the heroes of Nigeria, the heroes of this election is the people of Nigeria, but in it, the young people. After NSAS, we were wondering what was going to happen next. But we have, the continuous voter registration that was on. The young people, when they saw the third force, because we used to PDP, APC, and so on, when they saw the third force and somebody who was younger, they tried to align. And that made them to generate the environment to say, hey, we are going to do this. It looked like this person had, and the piece of integrity in the third force generated, thunderous reactions from the young people. And they went en masse to register. They started to trust again. They started believing again, in the system. But while believing in that, all of that is said to, and then technology. We're in the tech age, and the young people were so alive. We went through the by-elections, the by-elections that had, technology played a huge role. And so, everybody was beginning to believe again. But what happened at the election? is that our adults, again, INEC as a body failed Nigerians, the politicians failed Nigerians, and so much has happened. All the results you are having, and even up to Saturday, you saw what happened there, that a rec who has no right or no duty at all went on ahead to pronounce the winner of Adamawa election. He has no role at all. But you see, when the INEC body itself did what they did, it means that anybody, whether you are a rec or you're a national commissioner, you can do anything and you can go away with it because of the level of impunity. We started that election with 176,606 polling units. On the day of the election, there were so many polling units that they never saw. They queued in vain, and they never saw. We are still asking for the audit of the polling units that elections were conducted. And at the end of the day, pronouncements were made for even places that election did not take place. Pronouncements were made. What do we think we are doing with that level of illegality? And so that focus, it now has really given Nigerians, some people were telling us, they say, look, if this thing doesn't happen, if the election is not transparent and free, I'm leaving Nigeria. If you know the kind of volume of Nigerians that are leaving today, but I don't even have problem with it. If we are having, in terms of investment in education, if we could, do as much as we can to make sure that we can give roles to other people, if you invest in your human resources, you can export them. We have enough scientists to go into, to go to medicine, but we don't have enough schools for them. So you can do a lot of development. So let me just bring in some of the things. I'm told that time is fast spent. Issues of women empowerment, very, very important. Is women empowerment, engendering all the things that we're doing right from home and making sure that guys are more responsible, even with the house chores and so on. Very, very important. Issues of gender-based violence. We have the Chibok girls, some of them, about 97 of them, are still held in captivity. These are things that we are talking, and we continue talking. Technology is a key issue. Language investment. In East Africa, in some of the countries that I have gone to, you see a lot of investment in the languages of French and Chinese language, because this is where the world is going towards this area. In other places, if you go to the US, there is a volume of their children that will go to study in China, study the language in China. How are we preparing to engage in the other world? ActionAid has a platform, Activista platform. We are coaching and mentoring young people. We have volumes of young people that we are working with, thousands of them that we are scaling, building their skills and capacity and empowering them, focusing also on women-led interventions, networking and looking at the social movement. We are planning to reconvene to bring together past student union leaders, student presidents, to see what we can do for student unionism, because you need to look at the students unionism and the current educational structure where you are giving notice, children are in school, but with 000 almost every day. And we think we are building, we are investing. And so it's important to use human rights-based approach for some of the things, for all the things that we are doing. We need to create safe spaces. We have a digital hub for young people. Activista is a platform, and more young people can come on board. And so when you are doing your research and what you're doing, we can also be part of it. We have a global platform now. And then I need to look at, to say the national anthem says, "Arise, O compatriot." All of us are part of it. National anthem, pledge says, "I pledge to Nigeria, my country." Politicians are not pledging to Nigeria. They are not adhering to any rule of law. And so these are critical issues that we need to look at. And a few other points of generational things. A lot of people are doing some things, but if I look at time, I will not be able to pull in some of the things. But I believe that you need to walk the talk. Wherever you are standing, walk the talk. And I'm happy Michael was on earlier. We are very, very proud of the young people that have gone through our hands. And I hope that we'll not give up. We are not giving up on Nigeria, because this is one of the greatest countries in the world. Stand up right for Nigeria. And I want to say well done for this platform. And thank you for giving us the environment. Thank you.
All right,
Thank
we are
you,
not
ma'am.
giving up. Okay, let me just we're not giving up on Nigeria. Before I hand over to Favor and Shaw, someone sent me a message and said, "Is that not the woman from Action Aid?" So let me just tell you that that's Ene Obi. She's an activist and country director of Action Aid Nigeria. She was among those who struggled for democracy in her youth and was imprisoned. She was detained and kidnapped by the then military. She has since worked with the labor movement, led a feminist movement, and worked across the federal structure in Nigeria since 2018. And with her role in Action Aid, and has worked with local women leaders in challenge, to change, I beg your pardon, to challenge power, relations. And I can go on and on, but that's an Obi. Put your hands together for her, please.
Mr. Alvin, I was so much interested when she said they have innovation hub and they've groomed Action Aid has groomed a lot of young persons. So it means that when we go knocking on their door for partnership, they would not shut us out. Thank you very much, ma. That was a very interesting and powerful speech. You talked about poor investment in and for our population, and you also mentioned primitive accumulation and looting by our leaders. This is an issue that I have a question anyway, but I would keep the question to when we have the question and answer session, because we would have a question and answer session. Please just informing every of our speaker that we would be having a question and answer session after all our speakers would have spoken. I have three questions from what she said. But next on our list, we're having Alhaji Samaila Rukuba for the sake of our time. Alhaji Samaila Rukuba is an experienced managing director with a demonstrated history of working in the environmental service industry, skilled in AutoCAD, successful business owner, motor marketing and investment, strong business development professional with a public admin law and PG marketing MSc public relations focused on business management, marketing, and related support services. He has had several awards and had to present paper in several prestigious events. Ladies and gentlemen, if you can still hear me, please make welcome Alhaji Samaila Rukuba to talk about political parties and how it has created generational gap. So if you can hear us, please unmute your mic. You have the floor.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the long wait. I'm going to talk about the formal institutions such as political party in the bridging the gap of leadership in Nigeria. Well, I think this topic is going to be somehow a bit controversial or so. But however, at the end of the discussion, I would want us to look at some certain critical areas. The critical roles of political parties in bridging the leadership gaps, whether there are common goals in what we call the political parties with cohesive elements enough to be able to now produce and bridge the gap of leadership, the training opportunities, mentoring, creating of next generational leaders, and actually providing areas for accountability through code of conduct and transparency. Finally, I think the argument is going to be based on whether all political parties have these common elements enough to produce leaders. Now, formal institutions, my concentration, as you have assigned me, is to talk about political parties. They actually play very crucial roles in bridging the leadership gap and promoting effective leadership within the nation. You will discover that in Nigeria, right from time in the 60s, let me pick up from the 60s, where we became a republic and where political activities actually commenced till date. The military interregnum are not too important at this moment because we're talking of political parties. Now, we believe that political parties must have share common ideologies, values, and goals and seek to influence public policy. It is that influence in public policy that would actually produce a leader a political leader who will in turn, in his own capacity, have elected, produce other bureaucratic leaders. And here we begin to look at the morality within which such elections went through, morality which allowed the election to go, whether there were anger, whether there were acceptability, whether it was played, whether there was, I mean, basically the moral aspect of the elections. Now, political parties provide a platform for individuals to develop their leadership skills. Again, political experience build network of support, help them advance their careers by providing opportunity for training, mentoring, leadership development. Political parties can bridge the bridge, assuming it is okay. Now, in addition to political parties, can help promote accountability, transparency in governance by holding their members accountable for their actions. But besides, if we ask this question now and find out how, if there are curious political environment that is created even within one political party, you will find out that APC itself has a lot of segmentations where one does not allow the other, the etc. Could be cultural, could be religious, could be any other thing else. And then they produce leaders. The kind of leaders we want to bridge that gap. How would these leaders behave? At the end of the day, the kind of leaders we have are people who have been produced by who was more influential in his own areas of election. We saw what happened in Port Harcourt, where the very honest next generation youths were harassed. Not that they were not doing their job, but they were harassed to do the bidding of one overlord. Now tell me what kind of confidence would these young men of tomorrow wake up to believe that political parties are basically areas that can develop, train, create modes, create conduct, create morals for them to lead and bridge the gap tomorrow. Well, however, political parties, like we all know, should contribute to the leadership gap if they are well organized. Are they well organized? Is a question for us to answer. Overall, the role of political institutions, such as the role of formal institutions, such as political parties, critical in bridging the leadership gap by providing opportunities for leadership development, promoting accountability and transparency, and setting ethical standards. It is that ethics that is completely absent in political parties that is creating the problem. My co-speaker who just finished up talked about what happened in the latest issue on Saturday. You can see how daring Nigerians could wake up to be. They don't care about the outcome. All they care about the momentary satisfaction of their overload at that moment. Look at what happened on Saturday in Adamawa. Look at what happened in Port we're talking about. Look at what happened in Kogi. In Kogi, for example, a very young governor whom we have. Now we keep talking about not too young to rule, which was, of course, it was a cliche. Then we sang about it. Not too young to rule, not too young to rule. The young ones, and have they done better? If a governor would wake up in the morning and dig holes on federal roads just to prevent accessibility of a candidate who is perceived to be popular. Well, I don't know how we need to, at this moment, believe that political parties are actually the instrument through which we would use to bridge the leadership gap of tomorrow. It's a question that maybe at the end of when we start discussion, we will be able to now come up with this. And then at the end of the day, I hope this symposium, seminar, as the case may be, would be listened to with a communique that will pass to the lawmakers to let them know that the political parties as we have today is failing in its one of the most important roles of leadership in Nigeria. Basically, I will not take so much time with this because I think they're having to understand clearly what we're talking about at the moment and to make impact. It is not, there will be no need for us to talk so much about it than to give you these 5 points, which I think I've been able to argue. That political parties have a critical role in impacting morals for the future leaders. It must have common goals. There must be avenue for training opportunities. There must be avenue for mentorship and leadership development in the encapsulated in the political parties. It must have the capacity to create new generational leaders. Accountability through code of conduct, establish acceptable code of conduct. You don't do this, you don't belong to my party. But besides, it is not so. Transparency, finally, like I said earlier on, do we have the political parties that will bridge the leadership gap by training the youth of tomorrow? Well, let's see how it goes. Thank you.
Can you hear us, sir?
I
Can
can hear
everybody
you.
hear
I
us?
can hear you. I
Yes, we
hope I
can
was
hear
very
you.
clear. Was I clear?
Okay, that was a very wonderful speech talking about accountability. Hmm. I don't know where we'll start this discussion of accountability from because leadership accountability is imperative and we have not had it. As a matter of fact, we have lost accountability. However, I want to ask a question before I'll hand over to my co-curator, Mr. Alvin. Sir, what is the ratio of the younger generation and the older generation when it comes to political involvement? I mean, from political party objectives, we have the APC objectives, we have the PDP, we have other political parties. From your experience and your knowledge, what has been the ratio of the younger people and the older people? And then you made mention of not too young to rule. How has not too young to rule influenced political party mandates in these concluded elections?
Well, my discussion here, I think, actually concentrated on the political parties being or not being able to impact and fill in those breach the gaps. My problem here is not actually, I mentioned the issue of the not too young to rule to say that a few of the very youthful leaders that we've had in the recent of it have not been able to prove otherwise against the elders. You will discover and agree with me that since 1960 up through 67, where the Civil War broke, you would all the leaders that actually influenced the independence and actually took leadership were very young, an average of 20 something years, 23. Imbu was 23, somebody was 21, another was 19, even the one that we talk about was just 29 years old. So they're not too young to rule, and then we ended up in civil war. Now, what I'm talking about is that I really don't think that the age will really matter in this context based on your question. What I would think will matter here is the kind of ideology that actually would, as a matter of rules, laws, and statutes, to be inserted in political parties when drawing up the pros and cons of the political parties. They should be able to indicate that this is what you do. If you don't do this, you don't belong to this. Probably people will be guided. We have deviance in youth, we have the deviance in the adult. So having to know the percentage of youths in leadership and then the elders in leadership. Nigeria is not failing because of youth, it's not failing because of the elders. It is failing because of our very loose, very uncompliable rules that are set. The rules are set for to satisfy our religions, our religious backing, our tribal hegemony, etc., etc. So such rules must be directed in a situation where compliance have to be you either abide by or you don't belong. At that context, whether you are young or you are old, once you belong to a political party, the ideology must be very straightforward and compliable.
Can you? Okay, I thought my network for a moment was gone. Okay, sir. I heard what you said, and that's true. What you said is it's true. As a matter of fact, I feel like we've had people that have ruled us from pre-independence generation and are still relevant to governance even now. We have the likes of His Excellency, the former president of Nigeria, Chief Olusegun Obasanjo. We have the likes of T.Y. Danjuma and all that have been involved in politics over time and are still relevant to governance now. As a matter of fact, they play a key role in governance now. Speaking on this, what would you say has been the issue why we have not had continuity for the younger generation?
Well, I will still have to tie it back to our laws, our constitutional provisions, it is a situation where the constitution tend to support the strong, and then uh, the weak can go to hell or something that about is exactly what is happening. Because it's easier for somebody of influence to make it easy for his child, his associate's child, etc., to become what he was, whether he was good or he was bad. And of course, there's no way that person would definitely continue from what is the legacy of his uh, leader, whatever you call him, the person who brought him there, the benefactor. It definitely would be, you will continue in that light. And I think those are the major problems we're having here. We have very, as in the politics itself, I'm a practical politician to a larger extent. I know how much, as good as you could be, you will not be allowed to contest election if, quote and unquote, that big person somewhere sees you as a threat. You are coming in with a fresh, new ideology that he's not going to benefit. It becomes a problem. And we saw this even in the past election that somebody is speaking about. The youths came up and said this is what they wanted. But even at that, you discover that the amount they use themselves too, most of them sabotage their own cause because they were being controlled by some people somewhere along the line. So the issue here, like I said, if we have stronger rules that will not respect individual society, religion, or whatever, but rules that make it good. You could see it's happening in other countries, other advanced countries. A president was arrested, even though that's the first time in the United States an ex-president is arrested. But you could see in Britain it's happening every day. A prime minister is not even so certain. He closes from work this evening. He's not certain he's coming back tomorrow. If a very small offense of how much? £1,200, which his wife has as a share somewhere. That is money for breakfast for somebody, but besides, it's an issue. So if we reach that point, and behold, we came in from Britain. What? How comes they left the chair for us and took the seats they came here with? That is the question we're asking.
I think at this point we'll be moving on. Alaji Samalia, thank you very much for the presentation. It's been a wonderful one. We have joining us. We still have time for questions, so I think then we can ask as many questions as we want to ask. And we also crave your indulgence to just bear with us. We are rounding off, and we'll also have time for questions and answers. So joining us right now to give his presentation is Mr. Olani Sanusi from Yaga. That's information reaching me at this point in time. And we were talking about the extent of youth participation in leadership across generations. Okay, talking about the obstacles and the opportunities. So let's put our hands together as we have Mr. Olani Sanusi.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
You're welcome.
Good afternoon, and thanks for having me. But first, to make some corrections on my name. My name is Olaniyo Sanusi, not Olani Sanusi.
I beg your pardon. Olaniyo Sanusi. Thanks for the correction.
All right, that's fine. Thank you, and thanks for having me. So I'm going to be speaking on the extent of youth participation, obstacles.
You have to speak up so we can hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, better.
Yes, better
Is
now.
it better now? Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. So I said I'll be speaking on the extent of youth participation in leadership across generations. And we're going to be looking at obstacles and opportunities for young people. But perhaps a good place to start is to mention, and I've also heard this from previous speakers who have come on, is to mention that in history or historically, young people have always participated in leadership in Nigeria. I mean, we just have to look at the pre-independence era, which was majorly the fight for independence, which was majorly led by young people. You look at a young Anthony Enaro who pushed the call for independence in the parliament at the time, and also to look at the military eras, when Nigeria experienced a series of military coups in its history. And there's a young Gowon who led Nigeria through the Civil War and after the Civil War as well, and then down to the military regime of Babangida, who wasn't young, but at the time we had vibrant student union governments in our tertiary institutions, and this student union bodies served as a body of young people to participate in leadership, to express their views, to espouse theories on what leadership should be like in the country. But by the time of General Babangida's regime, we Nigeria witnessed a decline in student unionism. Um, in that the military turned student union bodies into a tool to foster instability in the country, and since then, student union has not been able to recover. And now further to 1999, when Nigeria returned to democratic rule after a long time under military dictatorship. In 1999, which returned to democratic rule, young people to an extent were prevented or were barred from participating in the political process, with the constitution providing that um, anybody would be contesting for political office, especially for state house of assembly and house of representatives office, have to be 30 years and older. Um, so that was an eligibility barrier to youth participation in politics. That's continued up until 2018, when the Not Too Young to Run legislation was passed into law by President Muhammadu Buhari. Now, what the Not Too Young to Run legislation did was to reduce the age eligibility barrier, which has previously prevented young people from running for office. Reduced the age for House of Assembly from 30 to 25, and that of House of Representatives from 30 to 25. The legislation also reduced the age for running for office of the president from 40 to 35. And if you look at the African Youth Charter, which Nigeria is signatory to, it states that a young person shall be considered as someone between 15 to 35. Sorry, 18 to 35, I beg your pardon. While the current Nigerian Youth Charter states that a young person shall be categorized as someone between 15 to 29. Having provided that historical perspective, I would just like to quickly talk about the obstacles that currently prevent young people in Nigeria from participating in the political process. And first off is funding, is lack of finance. Nigeria's political process is a very expensive one. Nigeria's the political space, winning elections, not just winning elections, but running for office in Nigeria, contesting for office is a very expensive venture. From the cost of nomination forms to the cost of, excuse me, to the cost of electoral campaigns, right, are very expensive in nature, and this is one major barrier to young people. Despite the fact that the legislation came into place in 2019, we have seen from research and from trends since the 2019 general election that the major barrier from that prevents young people from enjoying the provisions of this legislation is funding, because by the time a political party, and this is saying an established political party in the country pegs their cost of nomination forms with exorbitant amounts. A young person, a 25-year-old who just graduated from university, or who had graduated a few years before turning 25, and who has an ambition to run for office, would not be able to gather much finance as expected to be able to run for office. For example, in the recently concluded elections, the cost for the ruling party's state house of assembly form was pegged at 1.5 million naira, and that's excluding the cost for prosecuting electoral campaigns. Where would a young person get 1.5 million naira from to purchase a form? And we also have to remember and understand that unemployment rate in Nigeria currently is really, really high. So the economic disadvantage that young people face in the country is a major barrier to them enjoying the legislation which was passed into law in 2018. And secondly, is an enabling environment. There's a culture of a lack of undemocratic candidate selection process within Nigeria's within Nigerian political parties. We've seen situations whereby people would win primary elections within the party, and then when it's time for the results to be announced, um, um, the big wigs within the party would prevail on that candidate or on that aspirant or on the party itself for the person who want to be substituted. This happened to quite a number of young people in the 2019 general elections, and we've also seen cases of such in the 2023 general elections. So there's no enabling environment for young people to participate because if after spending so much resources to emerge as the flag bearer of the party, purchasing the nomination form, embarking on campaigns within the party to garner support for the primary election, and a young person emerges as the flag bearer and wakes up the following day to discover that he or she has been removed because some godfathers within the party or some big wigs who are major financiers of the party do not want them to be the flag bearers, or because they have other candidates that should fill that position. That prevents young people from participating effectively in the political process. And thirdly is okay, I mentioned unemployment rate earlier. And thirdly is the lack of mentorship opportunities for young people um, within Nigerian political parties. I've heard other speakers talk about intergenerational dialogue, and I think this is one thing, or this is one area that should be encouraged within our political parties. The older generation should not see young people as opposition, and same goes for young people as well. There should be a form of collaboration. There should be a meeting point whereby young people are able to lean on the experiences of the older generation within the party, and the older generation are willing to mentor young people within their political party to hold leadership positions. I believe that if these obstacles are tackled, then we're going to see an increase in participation, in political participation from young people. Before I go to the opportunities, well, I would just like to mention that from the 2019 general elections, despite the challenges faced by young people, we still had rather 20 young persons between the ages of 25 and 30 who are direct beneficiaries of the Not Too Young to Run legislation who won their elections in the 2019 general elections. So just to say that despite these challenges, young people are still thriving, maybe you're still thriving a bit to ensure that their voices are heard, to ensure that they get into these positions or into these public offices. Now to opportunities. Again, the Not Too Young to Run legislation represents a big opportunity for young people to emerge as leaders in the political space, especially when it comes to contesting for elections. Nigeria today has a very high youth population. Young people between the ages of 15 to 35 are the largest demography in our population today. And this is over in between 60 to 65% of the Nigerian population. Now, we all know that politics is a game of numbers. And if you have a large demography, hello, hello?
Please go ahead.
We don't
Okay.
hear you well, sir.
All right then. So if you have a large demography of the population being young people, we as young persons we need to start to think about how to leverage the numbers. How do we leverage the numbers? Because it's all about us right now. It's our future at stake here. It's our future is tied to the Nigerian future as well. And the Not Too Young to Run legislation represents a big opportunity for young people to engage the political process, especially as candidates in elections. Um, uh, that's one opportunity for young people to look at, and also the reduction in the number of political parties also represents an opportunity for young people to engage the process. In the 2019 general elections, we had 91 political parties. Um, post the 2019 general elections, the number of political parties was reduced to 18 by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. And this represents an opportunity for young people in the sense that now there are political parties that young people can easily join. They can carry out their research and see which political party or which platform best represents their interest or to further their interest as well. With the lower number of political parties now, it's easy for young people to be able to identify which party to belong to and then join such political party en masse. It's not just about running for office; it's also about becoming active members of the political parties. You don't just want to walk into you cannot just walk into a political party today and say you want to run for office in the same election year. That's impossible because there are people within the party themselves who have worked for the party, who continue to work for the party, who also believe that they deserve a better opportunity or an opportunity ahead of you. But with this low number of political parties, young people can identify which party best represent their interest and join the political party en masse, work for the party ahead of the next electoral cycle. When young people start to contribute effectively to the growth of the party, when it comes to the time of elections, their voices will certainly be heard, and they would have put in work that will serve the party from the from the years before the election. So that's also another area of opportunity. Um, Another area of
Mr. Lani,
opportunity.
Mr. Lani, you have to start rounding up, please.
Okay, yes, I am.
You have
Um,
1 more minute.
so
Thank
thirdly
you.
is social media as a tool for mobilization for young people. We've seen campaigns in recent years that has leveraged social media for mobilization for young people. And in today's world, young people are the kings of social media. So if young people are able to positively use social media as a tool for mobilization, it helps them reach a wider audience, which finances or lack of finances naturally prevents them from reaching. We have the Not Young to Run campaign, we have the NSAS protest, where social media was heavily leveraged on. And also, lastly, is the use of technology. Young people are the drivers of technology in the world today, and Nigeria is not. Nigeria is also party to that. So, for young people, using the use of technology represents an opportunity as well because we have the knowledge. We're the major players in this space. It's just for us to be able to design it to further our political ambition or to increase political participation amongst us. I think, yeah, those are the opportunities for young people to participate or to increase youth political participation in the country. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. That was from Mr. Sanusi. Thank you so much. We'll be going because we have two more speakers and we want to make it very fast, speed of the essence at the moment because we have lineup of questions that we must also ask our speakers today. So right about now we have in the house Hamzat Lawal, and we'll be talking about identifying ways youth now because the last speaker talked about one of the major challenges we young people have is finance, how to empower themselves to even compete, favorably. So Hamzat Lawal will be talking about identifying ways youth can empower themselves for leadership. So please put your hands together as we welcome Hamzat Lawal.
Okay,
Is it-
just to correct that, Hamza Lawal is having technical issues. He dropped a message. He was here a couple of minutes ago, and he had to drop off because he was having technical issues. But
Okay.
while we are waiting for him and the other speaker, I don't know, sir, if you can hear us, Alhaji Rukuba. I have a question that I would like to ask you from the audience. Can you hear us, sir? Alhaji Rukuba, if you can hear us, please, you could unmute your mic. I have a question that we would like to ask you from the audience while we are waiting for Mr. Hamza and the lawyer, Barrister Inibege Ifyo. The question I have from the audience to ask is, how about the high-priced and prohibitive cost of nomination forms stipulated by political parties? I mean, they're asking how has this not created gaps and what has been done to um, allow the younger persons also have access to get political party forms.
Yes, the question is very correct in the right direction, which still points to the fact that there are established obstacles to ensure that some people continue, others will be discouraged. I wonder why, in a nation where we all know the extent of our capabilities, and we all agree that such laws, prohibitive amount of money expected, either as for buying form, registration, or running campaign generally, are so prohibitive, and yet those who make the laws are very comfortable with it. I am my problem here. I've concentrated on the mere fact that because having been tested in that direction, I've seen the difficulties in raising funds to be able to meet up expectations, needs, and demands of the so-called electorate. I think is highly not justifiable because it is basically an avenue that will discourage a lot of others. If you don't go to somebody who will give you those funds under conditions after which you win the election, you'll be subservient, obeying him and follow, then you will not make it. That's exactly what it is. So for me, I think it's a very sad story. Uh, asking that question is as good as agreeing with the parameters that we need to have laws that will peg. For example, they say all women contesting for elections under whatever political party pay 50% of what the man pays. That means there's a figure. The legal statute that guarantees elections can establish such standards that must be complied with by any political party. So they should come up with a situation where not more than an amount, social amount of money must be asked. One, for registration, purchase of forms, and etc. etc. So for me, the man who asked that question for me, I think I agree with him that the question he asked is as good as the answer. It is terrible.
Okay, thank you so much for answering that question, sir. I have one question for Mrs. NLB before she goes from the audience, ma'am. If you can hear us, please unmute your mic. The question is, what form of interaction should define the relationship between the older and younger generation?
Thank you very much for your question. I think the issue of mentorship is very, very important. Wherever we are working, we should look at the young people because the quality of a good leader is in replicating leaders. If you are working in an environment and you are not able to mentor people who can take over that seat from you, you are not a leader because you don't stay on the stage for all the time. When the curtain closes, you exit the stage, and the world is the stage. And every opportunity that you have, every seat that you occupy is a stage and is only for a time. And so mentorship is a big issue. In Action Aid, we have mentored a lot of people. Some of them are in the UN today. They are the young ones in the UN General Assembly, the Youth Assembly. I'm just excited that we have been able to send many Nigerians out of the country to learn and to study and to come back to Nigeria, and we still have those opportunities. So I think it's something that I'm very, very proud of. But I'm very proud of the young people of Nigeria. They gave me hope, during the NSAT, and I hope we have more time for interaction. So Action Aid is available. There is a department, if you come, the one that social mobilization is the one that takes care of the youth. So when your team comes in, we will meet and also to channel. If you find an activist, you hold them because there are not very many. And the young people have been so tortured, into submission to different levels, and they are an endangered species, despite the fact that they're a majority in Nigeria.
Great answer. Now, one last question for you from the audience. Someone says that with the way youths are seen as not having good quality and not being um, well groomed to take up leadership responsibility, what are some of the most important qualities that aspiring youth leaders should have? That question was directed to Mrs. Enel.
Okay, for me, I think the issue of patriotism, it should not be in question with anybody who loves Nigeria. With an activist, there is no question about patriotism because your total attention is the quality of your citizenship, your patriotism to Nigeria should not be in question. Our leaders today and the politicians, if they were to concentrate and also to focus on Nigeria, you can't steal from Nigeria. Where are you taking it to? You cannot loot the treasury because it's like this is your father's house. Where are you looting? And then you're having a lot of people, they retire, you are not paying them, but it's okay for you to continue to build burglary proof, around yourself. You continue to build burglary proof. Burglary proof will not save people in the future if you don't pay attention to the quality of citizenship. And that is investment. For me, I propose free education. It may not be too compulsory because some people are not interested in reading. But those who want to read, they should be given scholarships. They should have free access to education, quality education. And, in Rwanda, they have closed down some of the, in fact, the private schools are closing down for the public schools because the government has taken deliberate steps to build the quality of the schools, to invest in their citizens, to prepare the country for the future. When I was in secondary school, I was taught by Indians, Americans, and so on and so forth. I was in a mission school. But today, you can't do that because that is not available for you. So there was an investment that you look at properly, and the nation will plan and say, this is the number of doctors that I want. And you know what? There are so many scientists, young scientists in this country. If you look at JAMB admission, and you are looking at those who are applying to read medicine, you will find them in their millions. And so let's handhold, let's invest in the youth because that's the future of Nigerians. Let's stop stealing from ourselves. There's a lot of insanity in the system. So many people are insane because if you are not insane, why are you stealing? A thief is a thief. We are just glorifying names of saying this is a mismanagement, fraud, and all of that. A thief is a thief.
Yes.
If you steal 1 million, you're a thief. If you steal 1 naira, you're a thief. If you steal 1 billion, you are just a common thief. You are stealing and you are debting the young people of the country because you take that money home and you go and rub it on your children. And so you must fight for yourself. Each and every one of you, I ask you to stand upright for yourself and fight for your own rights. I'm fighting for my name before I go and meet my maker. What about you? Stand upright for Nigeria. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. All right, so we have more questions. Tim, do you have questions from you? Madam Favor, can you hear me? All right, so Madam Favor, is there more questions? All right, so I guess the network has kicked Favor out, so we are getting better. I hope she joins us back because she's with most of the questions asked. Mr. Tim, I guess you compiled some questions from the audience. Mr. Tim, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, I can hear you.
Please. Okay, welcome back, Madam Favor. Go ahead, please.
Okay, I think she has most of the questions. But I wanted to ask Madam NLB a few questions, or one question. Let me see. I hope, is she still there?
She dropped a message that she's leaving for another function, so I think she's gone.
Oh, we're just the three of us in the
No,
studio.
actually, we
Okay.
still have Alhaji Samaila Rakuba with us.
I think she's trying to get in.
Okay, it's been an interesting discussion, interesting event altogether. It's been well put together, and I want to thank everyone. Um, I want to thank our Amazons for doing great job to each topic that was given to them. This is a wonderful, wonderful discussion, and we hope to take up from here. This is not the last, obviously. This is not the best. There's going to be more good, interesting, intellectual, and of course, actionable conversations moving forward. Thank you, everyone that joined from different platforms, from our WhatsApp, I'm sorry, excuse me, from our Facebook, from our YouTube, from our Instagram. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your joining us. I'll hand over now to Mr. Alvin to do the closing remark.
All right, so you've almost done the remarks already, but we've had a wonderful time and we've had a very productive time, and we want to appreciate everyone that took the time to grace this event. It's just the beginning of greater things to come that we are sure about. And what a better way to start than this, to have dignitaries, that have people of repute coming to, to sacrifice their time to talk about bridging the gap. It's not a small task, but it's an achievable task that we believe we will achieve. We'll always come back to you. Thank you, everyone. I don't want to mention names so I don't miss out one name or the other. But if you're here today and you gave a speech, you gave you talked about one or two things, we say thank you very much. And for those behind the scene, I tell you, we have a team of able men and women. Now we were in a sea small compared to people where they pardon my Spanish. So we have a lot of people working in at the backstage, I'll call it, to make this a success. We also say thank you very, very much, and we also thank our speakers for giving us the liberty to always come back to them, again and again. Thank you so much. We can't take that for granted. It's been a wonderful time, and we had, a wonderful time today. We've had our Madam Favor Henshaw. I also thank you for putting this team together. Thank you so much. Thank you, Oga team. I celebrate you and your grace. Okay, and also I appreciate the name that would not want to show up here, but Donna Ilere, we say thank you very much for always being at the back of the back, but still doing wonderful things. For now, I think we hang the boots here, but before we hang it, I will pass the baton back to Madam Favor Henshaw. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Alvin. I think we've come to a close of this wonderful event. But please, just to honor our country, I would employ every one of us to just say the pledge, the first stanza of the pledge, and we call it a day. And I want to sincerely appreciate my team, every person that has worked day and night to ensure that this is successful. Permit me to call their names. I want to appreciate my technical director, Mr. Lukman. I would also appreciate Mr. Timothy, my head of research and policy. I would also appreciate Mr. Alvin, my communication strategist, and I appreciate Mr. Shaw, Victory Shaw. He's the head of tech, he's our program manager and also controls our social media. I want to appreciate Favor Enipala Bala. I hope I pronounced that right. I'm always getting it wrong. I want to appreciate her for her time. She's a member of the communication department. I also want to appreciate Mr. Tayo. He's in charge of an administrative department. I'd also want to appreciate Alex. Thank you to everyone that has been a part of this. Most importantly, I want to recognize my co-convener. I may not be calling her name, but this is going out to her and she knows herself. She's been an amazing person all through, and putting this together, we've worked tooth and nail day and night to ensure that this is a success. So to my co-convener, thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for putting all of this together, regardless of how far, how tough it gets sometimes, and we get stuck, but we don't leave each other. So this is me saying thank you to my co-convener and to every member of our team. So at the count of three, I would just ask that we say the pledge and we end this broadcast. Three, two, one. I pledge to Nigeria, my country, to be faithful, loyal, and honest, to serve Nigeria with sovereign strength, to defend our unity, and uphold all honor and glory. So help me God. Amen. Thank you all and have a wonderful day.
Gracias.